Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. Raisa Suelen, 23, lived in Curitiba, studying, working, and dreaming of a career in the fashion and beauty industry. She had moved from Bahia hoping for a fresh start, supported by someone she'd known since childhood. He helped with the move, offered job connections, and promised bright prospects. In early June 2025, he told her he'd lined up a great opportunity in another city. Raissa packed her things, said goodbye to her friends, and left with him. Just minutes later, every attempt to reach her failed. This is a story about trust that took a dark turn. It all began with one offer, too good to pass up. Raisa Suelen Ferreira da Silva was born in Paulo Afonso in northern Bahia. Ambitious from a young age, she stood out for her determination and dreamed of a career in fashion and music. Coming from a family without financial means, she understood early on that she'd have to build her own future. She entered beauty pageants, winning the regional Miss Serra Branca Teen Contest in 2020, around age 19, a first step toward public life. At the same time, she ran a social media page featuring humor and beauty content, promoting products. Later, Raissa enrolled in college to study aesthetics and worked part-time in retail and hospitality. When she was about 10, she met Marcelo Alves, who taught Kung Fu through a local community program that Raissa joined with her cousin. Their families stayed close over the years, especially with Marcelo's son Donovan, Raissa's age. Marcelo came to be someone Raissa's family trusted implicitly. His son, Donovan Alves, also grew up in Paulo Afonso and practiced martial arts alongside Raissa during their childhood. He was roughly her age. 3 people, bound by a shared story. One was chasing a dream, another was manipulating behind the scenes, and the third, caught in the middle, realized too late that things had already spiraled beyond repair. It was him who promised her an opportunity in the field she was passionate about. At first, she stayed with him and his son, later moving in with friends. To Raissa, Marcelo seemed like a mentor, a dependable figure. But, as later events revealed, he saw their relationship through a different lens. Raissa decided to move to Curitiba in 2022 when she was around 20 years old. She had long dreamed of advancing in the fashion and digital content world and knew that her hometown simply didn't offer the chances she needed. Curitiba, by contrast, seemed full of potential, modern, bustling, filled with agencies, events, and companies in the very industries she wanted to break into. But it wasn't just her initiative that fueled the move. A specific offer came from Marcelo Alves. Marcelo Alves, also known by his stage name Alves Lee, had been trying to make a name for himself as a stand-up comedian in Curitiba. He performed in bars and pizzerias and shared his videos on social media. By the time he offered to help Raissa relocate, he had already been living in Curitiba for over a decade. According to her relatives, Raissa trusted Marcelo completely at that time. He wasn't just someone she knew, he was someone who had earned her trust over the years, someone she and her family had known since her childhood, through his son, Donovan. Marcelo offered to help her move to Curitiba, promising support and claiming he had professional contacts that could help her career. People close to Raissa say he also assured her that he could assist with housing and getting settled in the city. It all sounded convincing enough, and Raissa took the leap. Initially, she lived in Marcelo's home along with his son. It was a practical start, given she arrived in a new city with no friends or relatives. But not long after, she moved out. The exact reasons remain unclear, but according to those familiar with her situation, tensions had started to build between her and Marcelo, making it uncomfortable for them to live under the same roof. At some point, Marcelo began to show Raissa a level of interest that crossed the boundaries of friendship or mentorship. After that, she found a new place with some friends, where she remained until the events of June 2025. Life in Curitiba wasn't easy. Raissa kept working on her growth as a content creator while searching for opportunities in the beauty and aesthetics industry. At the same time, she attended college to gain professional training in her chosen field. Like many young adults starting out in a big city, she also worked part-time in retail and food service. Despite the challenges, Raissa didn't complain. She had a clear goal: to achieve financial independence and professional recognition. After moving, Raissa began to keep her distance from Marcelo. She no longer saw him as someone close. Still, he remained on the edges of her social circle, occasionally checking in and maintaining the image of a family friend. That gave him just enough presence to keep a surface-level trust. Raissa didn't show signs of concern, at least not publicly. In Curitiba, she appeared confident, focused on her goals, and determined. No one in her circle imagined that a connection from her past could pose a threat. Everything looked like the normal adult life of a young woman determined to succeed on her own terms. But one conversation changed everything. On the morning of June 2nd, 2025, Raissa woke up with a plan. She was set to leave Curitiba and start fresh in the city of Sorocaba, located in the state of São Paulo. She had made this decision after speaking with Marcelo, who told her he had found her an excellent job. According to him, the position in Sorocaba came with great pay, housing, and room for professional growth. Raissa believed this was her big break, a real chance to improve her life. The day before, she had packed her clothes, personal belongings, and work tools. She had no doubts. She told her friends she wasn't just going on a trip, she was moving for good. The offer was so promising that she said she could stop renting her current place, quit worrying about side gigs, and focus entirely on her new job. She also shared that Marcelo would personally drive her to Sorocaba, and he did show up that day. He had borrowed a car from someone. He didn't own a vehicle himself. Around 11 a.m., he arrived in the Portão neighborhood. Raissa's friends helped carry her bags down and said goodbye at the entrance to the building. A video from that moment still exists. It shows Raissa getting into the car, and in the background, the voice of one friend can be heard, overcome with emotion. For everyone watching, it felt like a heartfelt farewell, like their friend was leaving for something better. The car carrying Raissa and Marcelo pulled away. That was the last visual confirmation of her whereabouts. Just 20 minutes after leaving, Raissa stopped responding to messages. Her phone went offline, calls didn't go through, and texts were never delivered. At first, her friends thought she might just be out of signal range, traveling through a rural area. But as the hours passed, their concern grew. Throughout the day, none of her friends or family could reach her. Disappearing without a word was completely out of character for Raissa. She was known for keeping in touch, especially when traveling. By evening, her friends tried calling Marcelo, but he didn't answer. That's when they contacted Raissa's parents back in Bahia. By that night, the family had filed an official missing person report. Law enforcement began the investigation almost immediately. The first steps focused on confirming key details: her last known location, timeline, who she was with, and the route she was supposed to take. It was verified that on the morning of June 2nd, she left Curitiba with Marcelo. After that, there was no trace of her. No phone calls, no messages, and no signs she had arrived at her supposed destination. At the time of her disappearance, Raissa had been in good spirits. She hadn't mentioned any doubts or problems. What she told her friends painted a hopeful picture. She was ready to start a new chapter with stability, growth, and a promising career. That optimism, the way she had spoken about the future, made her sudden silence even more alarming. None of her loved ones could have predicted that a move arranged by someone she'd known since childhood would lead to her vanishing. To them, it seemed straightforward. She had accepted a job offer, gotten help relocating, and set out for a new life. Raissa was a grown, independent woman, not someone prone to impulsive decisions. That's what made her disappearance so difficult to understand. That day ended without answers, leaving everyone in a state of growing uncertainty. Raissa's phone stayed silent. No texts, no signs of movement. And as more time passed, one thing became clearer. What had seemed like a chance at a better life might have been a trap all along. Since Marcelo Alves was the last known person to see Raissa, the investigation quickly centered on him. Marcelo told police that Raissa supposedly changed her mind about going to Sorocaba and asked to be dropped off in the Ganchino area, about 9 miles from where she lived. He claimed she said she would order a ride through an app and head somewhere else. That, according to Marcelo, was the last time he heard from her. But his account raised red flags. Why would Raissa, who had carefully packed and planned her move, suddenly back out? Why didn't she call her friends? Why didn't she notify her family? There were no clear answers. Police recorded Marcelo's statement, but kept digging. His behavior started to seem unusual. At first, he invited Raissa's family to travel from Bahia to Curitiba and stay with him while they searched. It looked like an act of kindness, but over time, it began to feel like he was trying to stay in control of the narrative. In conversations with relatives, he came off as supportive and concerned, but deflected when asked direct questions. Raissa's sister, Natalia Ryan, began coordinating efforts from their hometown. She printed and distributed flyers with Raissa's photo, shared information across social media, and reached out to followers and contacts. Her goal was to draw attention to the disappearance as quickly as possible. She hoped Raissa might have been detained somewhere against her will or caught in a situation where she needed help. At the time, no one feared the worst. Meanwhile, law enforcement continued conducting interviews. They focused in particular on Marcelo's son, Doni. He told investigators that his father had mentioned the trip to Sorocaba and had agreed to give Raissa a ride, saying he had business in that direction. But according to Doni, things didn't go as planned. He recounted Marcelo telling him that Raissa had backed out, come back to their place, and then left again, this time for good. That version clashed with what Marcelo told the police. His stories weren't consistent. One version in one conversation, another version in the next. Over the span of 8 days after Raissa disappeared, Marcelo gave at least 3 different accounts of what happened. In one, she left and got into a rideshare. In another, she stayed at his place, but vanished later. In a third version, she decided not to move and asked to stay with him, but he turned her down. His son also failed to provide a clear timeline. The conflicting stories and shifting details only deepened suspicions. The family that arrived in Curitiba was met with a complete lack of clarity. Police had no security footage, no location data, no eyewitnesses. The only confirmed detail was that Raissa had gotten into a car with someone she trusted, and then vanished. Since the moment she disappeared, there had been no activity from her phone, no use of her bank cards, and no sign-ins to her social media accounts. These facts strongly suggested that she didn't leave on her own without leaving a trace. Marcelo's behavior became increasingly unusual. When speaking with Raissa's family, he dodged direct questions, shifted conversations to vague or unrelated topics, and kept insisting that things would work themselves out. His calmness under the circumstances felt off. At the same time, he continued posting on social media as if nothing had happened. For Raissa's loved ones, this was emotionally overwhelming. They couldn't understand why someone who had known her since she was young seemed so unconcerned, so detached. Why wasn't he doing more to help? And more importantly, why did his explanations keep changing? That question became even more pressing once the family started to demand clear, logical answers and received none. Meanwhile, investigators began to focus closely on Marcelo. His statements didn't align with the evidence they were gathering. With no proof to back up his claims and Raissa's sudden silence after entering his car, suspicion fell heavily on him. The family grew increasingly certain he was hiding something. Still, no one yet grasped the full extent of what that might be. On June 9th, 2025, Marcelo Alves walked into the police station with his attorney. He announced he was ready to tell the whole truth. By that point, suspicion against him was no longer subtle. His shifting accounts, the lack of any supporting evidence, and Raissa's disappearance after being with him all pointed in one direction. That day, he officially confessed to committing a serious crime. Before giving his statement, Marcelo sent a voice message to Raissa's family attorney. In it, he said he had looked at Raissa from every angle possible, denied any intent to hurt her, but admitted he may have felt something deeper than friendship. He also hinted that the full truth would soon come to light. That message marked the first direct indication of his potential involvement. During questioning, Marcelo admitted that the job offer had been completely fabricated. According to his statement, it was a setup designed to convince Raissa to travel with him. He borrowed a car from an acquaintance, picked her up at her home, and drove her to his place. There, he told her the truth. He had strong feelings for her, and there was no job waiting in Sorocaba. Marcelo claimed that Raissa was stunned and deeply upset. He said she reacted with anger, calling him out and expressing her disappointment. He described himself as becoming overwhelmed, losing control in the moment, and acting out in a state of emotional breakdown. According to his version of events, he used a plastic cable tie to end her life. Afterward, Marcelo said he left her in the room and stepped away. When he returned about 10 minutes later, she wasn't showing any signs of life. At that point, he made the decision to cover up what had happened. He wrapped her body in plastic sheeting and sealed it with duct tape. Then, he called his son Donnie and told him what had occurred. Marcelo stated that Donnie was shocked, urged him to go to the authorities, but did not participate in the act itself. Despite this, Donnie agreed to help his father dispose of the body. Together, they placed it in the trunk of the car. They drove out of town toward the municipality of Araucaria, just outside Curitiba. Marcelo said they picked a spot off a dirt road in a wooded area. There, they dug a shallow grave, no more than about 6 to 8 inches deep, and buried Raissa along with the wrappings. Marcelo gave this account voluntarily and later agreed to take investigators to the burial site. That same day, he led police to the exact location. When officers excavated the area, they found Raissa's remains just as he described, wrapped in plastic, in a shallow grave, with signs consistent with suffocation. It was a grim but concrete confirmation of his confession. Marcelo was immediately taken into custody. His son was questioned separately. Donnie confirmed he helped his father afterward, but insisted he had no prior knowledge of Marcelo's intentions and was not involved in the act itself. He said he was afraid, unsure of what to do, and had urged his father to come forward, but was unable to convince him. Marcelo's confession marked a turning point in the investigation. It allowed authorities to establish a timeline, locate the body, and formally charge him with a serious offense and unlawful concealment. His explanation of an emotional breakdown was quickly questioned as investigators noted details that didn't match such a claim. At that stage, the primary goal was to document the crime itself, the location, the method, and those involved. This marked the end of the case being treated as a disappearance. After the confession, it became undeniable. Raissa hadn't simply vanished. She had lost her life on the very day she thought her new chapter was beginning. Marcelo himself laid out the full sequence of his actions, leaving investigators to validate them with forensic evidence. After Marcelo Alves admitted to the crime and revealed the burial site, the investigation shifted to collecting physical proof. He was taken into custody that same day and held on the corresponding charges. While police had documented his statement, the focus turned to verifying the true nature of what happened through independent evidence. Forensic analysis soon raised doubts about Marcelo's claim that he used a plastic cable tie. Experts noted that the markings found on Raissa's neck were more consistent with manual suffocation or the use of a soft item, such as a plastic bag. The discovery of a polyethylene bag with the body only deepened that suspicion. Investigators began to believe the act had been premeditated, rather than the result of a spontaneous outburst. Marcelo's story of a sudden argument and emotional reaction conflicted with the facts. He had arranged transportation in advance, used the job offer as a ruse, convinced Raissa to bring all her personal belongings, drove her to an empty property, and then isolated her. His deliberate steps to conceal the body, wrapping it, transporting it, and burying it, pointed to cold, calculated planning rather than a moment of lost control. Authorities also confirmed that Raissa had no digital activity, no messages, no calls, no bank transactions, from the moment she got into the car with Marcelo. Investigators believed he had intentionally cut her off from the outside world to carry out the act in isolation. Interviews with her friends, neighbors, and co-workers provided no indication that Raissa had planned to leave voluntarily or make sudden life changes. By the end of the preliminary investigation, authorities concluded that the crime appeared to be an act of gender-based aggression. The key factor was the motive. Raissa had declined to enter into a romantic relationship with the accused. In Brazil, this type of case is legally classified as femicide, a charge applied when a serious act of aggression is committed against a woman specifically because of her gender, with the intent to overpower or control her. This classification carries a sentencing range of 20 to 40 years in prison. Investigators determined that this was not a heat-of-the-moment incident, but a calculated act meant to eliminate someone who had rejected the perpetrator's advances. The court would later decide how much weight to give the defense's version of events. But even at this stage, the narrative offered by the accused seemed inconsistent with the growing body of evidence. Marcelo's son, Doni, was also pulled into the legal proceedings. Although Marcelo denied that Doni was involved in the actual act, Doni did admit to helping afterward, moving the body, driving to the burial site, and participating in the cover-up. As a result, he was charged with unlawful concealment. He was initially taken into custody, but released on bail, since that charge does not typically warrant extended imprisonment. Once Marcelo Alves's confession was confirmed and the circumstances of the crime fully exposed, the case moved into its next phase: public reaction and the emotional toll on Raissa's loved ones. Her family, friends, and the thousands who had followed the case were devastated. It wasn't just the nature of the crime that was shocking, it was the identity of the person responsible. This was someone Raissa had known since she was young, someone she trusted. The gap between the image of a supportive mentor and the person behind the crime made the reality even more painful. The case drew widespread attention across social media. Raissa's photos, posts, and videos spread quickly across Brazil. People spoke out about injustice, the risks of misplaced trust, and the betrayal that can come from those closest to us. Her story resonated as a national tragedy, not just because of the loss of a young woman, but because it happened in a setting where she believed she was safe, with someone she considered part of the family. The case also became a focal point in Brazil's ongoing conversation about gender-based crimes. Human rights organizations highlighted that such acts often follow a disturbing pattern. Many are committed by individuals who already have a personal connection to the victim. Raissa's story became a powerful example of how manipulation, control, and hidden aggression can escalate into irreversible consequences. advocacy groups used her name in awareness campaigns, pushing for legal reforms and stronger prevention strategies for gender-related violence. Marcelo remains in custody, awaiting trial. Since his confession, he hasn't made any further statements or public comments about the case. His son, after being released on bail, has also stayed out of the public eye. But the story hasn't faded from public memory. Posts about Raissa continue to circulate, especially around the anniversary of her disappearance and her birthday. Though the trial has yet to take place, even during the early phase of the investigation, Raisa Suelen's case became symbolic. It illustrated how thin the line can be between trust and danger, how easily manipulation can hide behind the mask of friendship. Raissa didn't take a reckless risk. She accepted help from someone she had known since childhood, and that, tragically, became the mistake that cost her everything. Raisa Suelen's story is more than just a private loss. It's a reminder that not all threats come from the outside. Sometimes they wear the face of care, friendship, and good intentions. That's why her story resonated far beyond Curitiba. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.